Unresolved big-ticket agenda item here is same-sex marriage. Today, Senate Republicans continued to dance around the issue, saying they are still working on amendments to the current bill that would create more religious protections. Now, with only hours left in this session, the fate of the bill is uncertain. Joining me now to talk more about all of this is Ross Levi. He is the Executive Director for the Empire State Pride Agenda. Ross, it's great to see you.
Good to be with you, Liz.
So this hurry up and wait situation has got to be trying. What is the latest that you have for us?
Well, I mean, it's fairly typical for the way Albany goes. We're actually feeling a great sense of momentum. We had over 500 people on less than 24-hour notice come to the Capitol today. We had clergy, faith leaders, parents of LGBT people, and just couples, loving, committed couples and their families talking about this issue and talking about why this is so important. So we're actually feeling pretty good about where we are today.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that event, the star of it was Senator Alisi, I think.
Absolutely. We had a whole lot of elected officials, and certainly Senator Alisi, it was great to have him there and add a bipartisan flavor along with some Republican colleagues from the Assembly.
He actually channeled Lady Gaga, which I thought was kind of a hoot. He reiterated what he has said on this show, which is that he will go across the country and talk about how, as a Republican, he has come out in favor of same-sex marriage. Before we get to the passage of the bill and its chances, etc., even if the bill didn't pass or didn't come to the floor, would the LGBT community continue to protect him and support him for what he has done?
Well, in general, we always stand by those who stand by us, and, conversely, we need to hold accountable those who aren't. So, by all means, we will be looking at a legislator's record, no matter what happens in the final outcome, to see that we can keep our friends around and if need be, take the next move and let democracy happen for those who don't.
Now, as I mentioned just at the beginning here, we had an announcement this morning that there was a framework between the three leaders, the governor, the Senate Majority Leader, and the Speaker, as to all of the unresolved issues, but not same-sex marriage. Does that make you feel upset or in some way that this isn't going to happen? Why did that occur?
No, it doesn't really give me any pause at all. This isn't a three-way agreement issue. The Assembly clearly is all set.
Right.
So whatever decisions there are to be made, that's either between the governor and the Senate, or it may just be among senators themselves deciding what they want to do. So to me, that's not necessarily a bad signal at all.
Yeah, because there were some people who were down at the Capitol who were sort of scratching their heads over it. But, I mean, it didn't strike me as surprising because I think that the speculation all along has been that this is the absolute last thing that the Senate is going to do if it, in fact, takes the bill up, and then senators will get out of Dodge. I mean, it's going to be very controversial.
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly a possibility, absolutely. I mean, we've seen that before in lots of other different issues like this. I mean, to me, this just feels, you and I have been doing this a long time. It's feeling like a pretty typical end-of-session rhythm, so
Yes.
None of this is giving me any great pause.
There was a statement that went out today from the coalition that the governor put together to push for same-sex marriage, and it basically was that there were thoughtful conversations being held about these religious exemptions. We have still not seen any bill language, which is difficult to actually analyze what is being talked about here. So what is being talked about here, actually?
Well, I mean, I think it's first important to recognize the significance that what we're hearing from anybody actually is about this idea of, making sure that religious liberties are protected, which is, a legitimate inquiry to have. We are not hearing the things we may have heard a few years ago, the idea that, allowing these people to marry is a horrible thing. We're not hearing this from elected officials. So I think the first thing to recognize is that's a real sense of progress, and I think our elected officials have heard that solid majority, the 58% of New Yorkers, and realize it's not a good political thing, and it's certainly not the right thing to be on the other side of that and saying horrific things about our families. So that's a real sense of accomplishment. I do think what's going on at this point is just, as we said, kind of thoughtful, deliberate discussions, which it's not illegitimate to do, to make sure that religious liberties are being protected. And Governor Cuomo has said quite categorically that he thinks that you can protect religious liberties without going over the line and discriminating against any families, and that's what we're expecting to happen.
While elected officials aren't using that kind of language, there are some protesters down at the Capitol who are using some pretty strong language. I mean, it is a little surprising, I think, in this day and age. I understand that people have their views and everyone's entitled to them, and people feel incredibly strongly about this, but there's been some a little bit hateful speech. How is your side taking that?
Well, I mean, I think obviously there has been some of that, and that's unfortunate, but we've also seen some really interesting moments where there have been clergy holding signs for and against marriage for loving couples, all singing the same songs together in the same hallway. Yeah. To me, I was struck and said, well, there you are, democracy in action.
Right. So can you give us any insight into the details of what this amendment might actually contain? Because yet again, we don't know how this is going to work. It could be that the Assembly, which is open to this, might have to call back the entire bill that it has already passed for the 4th time and repass it all. Or it could just pass what's known as a chapter amendment, which is sort of an addendum onto an already passed bill. Do you have any idea how this is going to go?
I don't, and I think you've heard me say this kind of thing before. My experience in Albany is if there's the will to get it done, mechanics will never stand in the way. Mechanics can sometimes be used as an excuse, but we're going to be working hard to make sure that's not the case. There's really no excuse for government not doing the will of the people, letting this bill come to the floor for a vote and hopefully being passed into law.
Are you expecting a vote tomorrow?
Again, timing is tough to do at the end of session. I'm here now. I'm not leaving, and we're going to keep on fighting until the vote happens. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm from the Capital District, but yeah, probably moved into the building for sure. Yeah.
Well, we actually are there too, camped out and consuming various fast food items. So we'll be keeping close tabs on everything. I want to thank you very much, Ross Levi, for being with us.
Thank you, Liz.